My name is Maxim Jago. A lot of you have probably heard my voice in tutorials. Most people look at me funny at these conferences because they recognize my voice but not my face. So just to reassure you, now let's click on the File menu, and there you go, now you know who I am. So I'm a director, and I'm also a trainer. I write the official book on Premiere Pro and record a lot of training on it. And I want to show you some tips and tricks that I've learned from working with Premiere Pro as an application, and just talk about some ways to avoid thinking. Because I think that the important part of workflow is flow, and for me that means entering a Zen state of no mind. It's a state where all things are possible and your imagination is free to roam. And for me that means thinking about technology as little as possible. So what I'm showing here on my screen is the next release. This is the next version of Adobe Premiere Pro. And you've probably seen a little bit about this already. I'm going to talk about a mixture of things today which are awesome. And I'm going to try and show you some tips and tricks that you might not be familiar with, things that you might not have tried already. Before I get started, just give me a show of hands. How many people have Creative Cloud and are using Premiere Pro? Okay, I have nothing to teach you. Thank you very much for coming. That's fantastic. And how many people are primarily using a different NLE, using a different system? Okay, good. So we're just mainly one big family. This is nice. This is a lot of love for Premiere Pro. Okay. So I'm going to try and see if I can show you some things that you haven't encountered before. There's a few advanced techniques I'm going to try and see if I can fit into the session. But again, the focus for me is very much on trying to avoid thinking. But before I get into some of the simpler stuff, I want to just introduce a feature that I think is quite a big deal for working with the Lumetri color panel. Now, you've probably seen that if you go into the different workspaces, you get different panels that are displayed at different sizes, and you all know that you can create your own keyboard shortcuts. But there's a couple of things to note about the color workspace. One is that the default workspace includes the Lumetri Scopes panel, which is great. But also you'll notice that when you're in the color workspace, the automation that selects your clip based on the position of the playhead is turned on automatically. So you see here, if I go back to editing, as I scrub through the timeline, this is a little spec commercial we shot. As I scrub through the timeline, you'll notice that the clips are not being selected automatically, but if I switch over to the color workspace, now as I drag through, they are. And this is really important because when you're working with the Lumetri color panel, the adjustments you make automatically add a Lumetri color effect, and in fact they'll update whichever is the most recent Lumetri color effect you've got. But the idea here is that we reduce the amount of clicking. You don't have to manually click in and select the clip. Just in case you don't want that option turned on, by the way, it's based on your track selection options as well. If I look under the sequence menu, you've got this option, selection follows playhead. You can turn that off if you want to. But I think it's a really nice, elegant feature in the interface that it gets turned on automatically. Now, we've got this shot here, and I'm a big fan of using adjustment layers. Is anybody not comfortable with adjustment layers? It's okay, be honest. Okay, so adjustment layers are a great way for you to combine grading effects. But there's another layer we can go to. We can work with master clip effects, then we can work with timeline clip-based effects, and then we can work with adjustment layers to give ourselves scene-by-scene looks. Before I get into that, over in my Lumetri color panel, you'll notice that we've now got this hue, saturation, and luminance secondary option. And it's really very simple. Now, I'm just going to turn off, I've got an adjustment layer here that's giving me 235 scope cutout. I'm just going to turn that off. I've got an adjustment layer that's adding a bit of a look for me where I've just warmed up the shot. But before I get into that, I want to see if I can just pick out the color on this dress with a secondary. Now, secondary color correction is an old term that comes from the old days of grading film stock, where you would do more detailed work second. It's not that fancy a technical term, really. You do your general adjustments first, and you do the detail work second, but now it's come to mean specifically that you are working on individual color ranges or within specific masks. And you can combine the effects of the mask feature in the Effect Controls panel with the secondaries in the Lumetri panel. So here I've got my Lumetri color panel, and if I want to, I can just pick out this red. So I'm going to choose the eyedropper here. And just as a little footnote, when you're using eyedroppers in Premiere Pro to select a color, if you're working with noisy footage, it's easy to accidentally choose a bit of noise, and then you've got a bad selection. So if you hold down the Command key on Mac OS or the Control key on Windows, Premiere Pro gives you a bigger eyedropper which picks out a 5 pixel by 5 pixel average. And it's a much better way to do things like keying. If you're doing chroma key work, you'll find that you tend to get a better key first time by using this option. So I'm going to choose this, and I'm going to pick out the red on this dress. And now in these options, I'm going to turn on to view my mask. And I tend to go for a white and black mask, so it just shows me very clearly what I've selected and what I haven't. And now that I've done this, I can add colors if I want. So let's go in here and expand. I'm going to add a little bit more. Let's go into this darker region. And now I've got my hue, saturation, and luminance controls to, frankly, mess with the settings. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm adjusting a color range, but let's see if I can just pull this out. I'm just going to drag at the top here to expand the range of colors that I've got. I'm going to expand the range of luminance. I'm not going to do this too precisely, but what I'm doing is identifying a region of the picture procedurally, a region of the picture dynamically that I want to make an adjustment to. So I'm limiting my effect to a specific range of colors. So you'll notice that these controls have a little triangle at the top and the bottom. The triangle at the top is for setting your core selection. The triangle at the bottom is for softening the edge of the selection. And you'll find, particularly for fast-moving footage, you'll often get a more natural-looking result by expanding that bottom triangle. It's just giving you a bit of a gray area of your mask. So let's turn off the mask here. And now that I've done this, I can begin to make some adjustments. I can also blur the mask a little, and that's very useful if you're working with very high-resolution, sharp footage, particularly if you're working with footage where pixels are coming in and out of the range of colors. If you blur it, you'll tend to get a more natural-looking result. But now I can do things like make adjustments to the luma levels on this dress, and just dropping the luma is giving me richer color anyway. And I can do things like begin to make an adjustment with this color wheel, so I can really pull out the red, really burn that out. And as you see now, down at the bottom, I've got the option to do some sharpening, some saturation adjustments, and I can even make a temperature adjustment just within that color range. So I'm really making this very punchy, very super real. As a filmmaker, I'm interested in magical realism as an aesthetic. I love Dadaism as an idea, but aesthetically, I just like the idea of magical realism. And that means having these super rich colors as long as they look believably real. So I'm probably not going to punch this up quite so much. Now, if I like this effect, if I think that the look works for this commercial, I can use the Lumetri effect as a preset in Premiere Pro. In fact, the colorimetry that's produced with the Lumetri effect is based on speed grade. It's advanced colorimetry. I can save this out as a lookup table. I can share it with other users, but I can also be lazy and just apply this to multiple clips as I would any other effect. So I'm going to my Effect Controls panel. Here's my Lumetri color effect. You'll notice that we've got HDR support here. I'm not going to talk about it so much today, but HDR is a big deal, and there's support for it right now inside of Premiere Pro. It just expands the dynamic range, and that means the difference between the brightest part of the image and the darkest part of the image just gives you more of it. If you get a chance to take a look at any of the HDR displays around here, I think you're going to agree that HDR is probably a bigger deal than stereoscopic. And that pains me because I love stereoscopic. But we're now looking at very high-resolution screens that are working in HDR, and it's so bright, it can cause a physiological reaction in your eyes. You can feel pain in your eye when the bright image comes on screen. It's very interesting new technology. But if I like this, I can select it. I'm just going to press Control-C or Command-C, and maybe I'll go to another clip and press Control-V or Command-V, or in fact, I can lasso a bunch of clips. And again, I'm just pasting this effect onto multiple items. So you can use the Lumetri effect as a clip-by-clip adjustment, but you can also use it just like any other effect in Premiere Pro, and you can make favorites from it. By the by, we were running a tips and tricks session just yesterday over at the Post-Production World Conference, and there was a tip there that not many people had seen, and I might as well just dive in with it right now. Sometimes when you're working on media, you'll be working on a nested sequence. So you'll be working on a container that contains multiple clips inside another sequence. And just to illustrate this, I'm going to go in here, and I'm just going to, let me scroll up a little bit. Let's see what happens if I turn this on. That gives me that really lovely, rich, warm sunshine. We shot this in the winter in New York, and this poor model, this is Laura Artin, she's a fantastic actress and model. She had to wear this very flimsy dress in sub-freezing temperatures and walk around as if it was a sunny day, because the reveal of the story is that it's supposed to be sunny until you realize it's actually snowing. And so we had to use a lot of post-production color correction to make it look warm. But I'm just going to illustrate this by adding a basic title. So in fact, let me go in over here and just show you another feature, first of all, that leads into this very nicely. Let me pull back a little bit. I'm going to turn this on. Oh, I need to relink it. Let me relink that. So in fact, I might as well walk you through that. I'm going to right-click and choose Link Media. And what I've got here is I've got an After Effects project that contains a composition which is animated text. And that animated text has been configured in After Effects as a text template. I'm going to show you where this is. But when you do this, your After Effects project becomes your media for Premiere Pro. So when you relink your media, you need to relink to it. So I'm going to search here, just like I would for media. There's my project. I'm going to click OK, and Premiere Pro is going to relink to my After Effects project. It's useful to know this because it allows you to use multiple After Effects projects or multiple After Effects compositions inside of an individual After Effects project as footage for Premiere Pro. So now that that's relinked, let me see if I've got, here we go, let me turn this on, and now you can see I've actually got the wrong title for this media. So I'm going to save the project with that linked, and what we've got here, let me just mute the music because we don't need it for this section. Let me just mute this so I can scrub through. We've got this very nice animated title, and this was generated in After Effects, and my text comes in, and it's really good, but this is supposed to be called Laura in the Snow. It's not supposed to be called Louise in the Snow. So what am I going to do? Well, if I want to, I can select this clip and I can press Command E or Control E, or I can right-click and I can choose Edit Original, and this will fire up After Effects. We should have After Effects loading up. Here we go. And After Effects wants me to connect to the media as well, so let's do that. And, oh no, that's fine, that's okay. And now we've got a different piece of media. It's opened the wrong project. Yay for live performances. Let me go in to the original project directly so you can see this. So I'm going in, and here is, let's go in here, and let's save that, and let's have this as a V2. What I'm getting here is After Effects wanting to update the project because we're working on a new release of the application. So you can't see it too well against the checkerboard there, but there's my animation. So what I've got now is text that is in an animated After Effects composition, and the composition is just straightforward text with some keyframes on it. But if you go to your composition settings, you'll find under the Advanced tab, we have this template option. Now, all you have to do is enable the template option for this workflow to work. Any unlocked text layers automatically become editable inside of Premiere Pro. So if you're producing motion graphics for an editor, you don't need to give them the After Effects project to work on. You can give them a Premiere Pro project with a dynamically linked After Effects composition, and you can let them update the text inside of Premiere Pro. This is a great way of producing idents or any kind of opener for a multiple episodic series. So I'm happy with this. If I want to, in After Effects, I can do things like maybe I can change the fill color here. So if I go to my, let's go to my paragraph panel. Where are we? Here we go, character, and I'll change the color. Let's give this a warmer color. maybe not that kind of greeny color. I'll give this something warmer and click OK. And let me select the layer so we have that. Da-da. All right. Great. So I've changed the color. If I toggle back to Premiere Pro now, you can see in just a moment this updates. Now, you've all seen this, right? This is a dynamically linked After Effects composition. And if you're working on 2 monitors, this means that you can just turn your head from one to the other and genuinely use After Effects as your effects editing application. That's old news. But because I enabled that checkbox to make the dynamically linked After Effects composition into a text template, if I select the composition on the timeline, I can now go to my, let me just go match frame this into my source monitor, go into my effect controls panel, and up here, I've got the text dynamically drawn from After Effects. So I can now modify the text, the letters that are selected in this composition without having access to any of the other controls, which I think you'd all agree, if you're a motion graphics artist, is a good thing. You don't want your editors to be modifying your compositions. So here, I'm just going to rewrite the text as Laura in the snow, click away, and it updates dynamically. But I have not modified the original After Effects composition. If I toggle back to After Effects, you can see, it's updated. Of course, I was working on the new version. Typical. But it doesn't. It leaves it alone. So we've got this dynamic link between the applications, whereas an editor, you don't need to know After Effects anymore. You can just work straight away inside of Premiere Pro. Now, I've got a problem, because the next thing I want to do in this project is I want to work with some nested media, and I want to get into that nest and work on it while still seeing the results, including my graphic. So here I've got some shots. I'm going to select these 3 clips, and I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to nest them. And where's my option? Here we go, nest. I don't mind about the name for now. And now you can see on my timeline, I've got a single segment that represents those 3 clips. Now, there's lots of reasons why you might want to do that. Maybe you want to apply an effect to them en masse. Maybe you want to make them a picture-in-picture, and they move together within that frame. Whatever the reason, you've created a nest. And if you want to, you can always double-click on a nest and open it to see the contents. Now, I've got a bit of a problem, because I want to modify these shots inside the nest, but I want to see them in the context of the finished master sequence. And one way to do that is I can grab this tab and I can drag it down. And this is called pancaking. So now I've got my master sequence up at the top. There you go, with the effects on it. There's my lovely Lumetri effect warming up the shot. And if I click into the panel at the bottom, I'm now seeing the original. But I have this problem, because the program monitor in Premiere Pro is automatically, dynamically going to update and show me the contents of the currently selected timeline panel. So how can I see this content in the context of this animated title? Well, it turns out it's very easy. If I want to, I can take this master sequence, which is Laura in the snow, over in my project panel, and I can just drag this into the source monitor. So I'm now seeing the full composition in my source monitor. And of course, if you've worked with nested sequences, you'll know that the reason you might choose to do this is to selectively edit content into your sequence. That's a way that a lot of people choose to work. You use sequences as reels, and you have all of the track patching controls. You're looking at me blankly. Is it because you're thrilled or because you've done this before? So I'll just show you. But before I get to that, if I now click into my nested sequence, in my program monitor, I'm seeing the nested sequence. In my source monitor, I'm seeing the final composition. Is that useful? I think that's pretty useful. And if I want to, if I line these up, so let's put this at the same spot. So let's go for 2 seconds in the timeline, and let's go for 2 seconds in my nest. So these are aligned playheads. If I go to my settings for my source monitor, I can gang the source and program monitors. So now, as I scrub through one, the other updates as well. So I'm now seeing, actually I've got to scale in for this as well. You can see the shot showing me the original media. I'm scaling in, and this is dynamically updating, which is very, very useful. So Now I can go in here, and maybe I'll make another, I'll just make something really obvious. So I'm going to go into my Effect Controls panel. I'm going to go into the curves, and I'm going to give this really high filmic dynamic range. Let's really crush those shadows. And you can see I'm getting the results in my timeline that's nested, and dynamically I'm also seeing the result in the source monitor. Now this process of working with nested sequences is amazingly useful if you do a little bit of planning. One of the ways that a lot of editors like to work is they'll take a nested sequence, and let's rename this. Let's call this source 001. Let's say I've been very organized, and it's very important to be organized, and I've named my reels based on slates and takes, or maybe I've named them based on scenes. And now, if I want to, I can go to my master sequence, and I can go to my original content. I can pick out shots, and I can drag content from one to the other. Now, this workflow is fantastically useful if you like to organize your media as long reels. It's totally non-destructive. If you do open a sequence, and now I'm going to drag that source sequence into the source monitor. If you do open a sequence this way, you'll notice, I'm just going to close down the timeline for this for a second, that what you get in the track patching controls, the track selection controls, is the source media. If this has lots of angles on it, let me just complicate this sequence so you can see. I'm going to add a couple of video tracks. Let's put this up here. If I now go to my master sequence and I open this up, you can see that I'm getting, let me turn this into individual tracks. I'm getting my source video 1, 2, and 3, and I can now do very, very selective edits from the source sequence into the master. I personally tend not to use that so much because I can't always see exactly which media is there. But with this little button, it's a tiny little button a lot of people don't learn in Premiere Pro, you can toggle the timeline between getting a nest or getting the individual clips. I'm going to show you both. So now I'm in the nest mode. I'm going to take the sequence from the source monitor, and I'm going to drag it into my master sequence. And you can see what I get automatically is that sequence nested. I'm getting all of those clips embedded in a single item. But if I want to use sequences as reels, I probably don't want to nest it. What I want is the individual clips. So I'm going to go to this button. I'm going to turn off the nesting mode. And now when I drag this down, I get the individual clips. So you can see the benefit of that. You can now treat it like one long reel, and it will just work. Now there's another way of doing this, because the media browser in Premiere Pro allows you to browse inside of Premiere Pro projects as if they were folders. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go to my, let's go to my media browser. I'm going to pull this up into the source panel. I'm going to browse into my media. And let's go in here and let's see now. In fact, I might as well just browse into, here we go. I've got my Laura in the Snow project. Here's a lot of the media for it. But let's have a look if I've got another project here that's worth looking inside of. There's my Venice media. In fact, let's do this with a new project. So I'm going to save this project, and I'm going to go to File, New Project. And let's call this Venice. All those settings are fine. That's OK. Now inside my Venice project, I'm going to go to my media browser, and I'm going to just browse into my Venice media. And I'm going to select all of this stuff and drag it in. And here's a couple of really great shortcuts to speed up your workflow. Now, the great thing about the media browser is that it takes care of the analysis. It just deals with everything for you. So I don't have to worry about whether it's an R3D file from Red or Canon RAW or what I would call a fragmented file type from P2 or XAVC. It just works. I'm going to select all of these clips in the bin, and I'm going to drag the clips onto the bin button, the new bin button, release the mouse, and they're now automatically added to the bin. It's just a nice quick shortcut for putting content into a bin. So let's call this media. Now, a lot of people have probably seen me demo that if you want to, you can take a clip and drag it onto the new item menu at the bottom of the project panel, and Premiere Pro will generate a sequence based on that media. This is a fantastic way of making sure that the sequence you're working on exactly matches your content. There's no conforming, there's no conversion, the frame rate matches, everything's just going to play. But not so many people know, if I just get rid of this sequence, you see the sequence is named after the clip. Not so many people know that you can actually take an entire bin and do the same thing. And what you get on the timeline is the contents of the bin in the order in which they appear in the bin as they're sorted, including any in and out marks that you've added. So if you were to go into a bin, go into your thumbnail view, sort these in different orders, go in and add in and out marks. So I go press in and out and so on. This is Venice. If you've never been to Venice, you need to go to Venice. It's a beautiful place. I can create my in and out marks, put them in the order I want, and then take the whole bin and throw it into a sequence, and I'm done. A lot of people might have seen when the feature was added that, I don't know if you can see here, for example, if I hover my mouse over this thumbnail in the bin, let me just move this up a little so you can see it at the back, make this a little bit bigger. If I hover my mouse over these clips, I get a duration at the bottom right corner of the thumbnail. But while my mouse is in position at a point that I think would be a good in mark, I can just press the I key, and I've now added an in mark to that clip. If I just hover a little bit further and press the O key, I've now selected 8 seconds and 2 frames, and I didn't even need to open it in the source monitor. You can also use J, K, and L. If I select this, I can press the J key. It's probably going to be a bit noisy. Let me show you this shot. So if I press the J, K, and L keys, I can play forwards, I can press the space bar, and I can use each thumbnail as a mini source monitor, which is pretty useful. But what's great about the way Adobe have developed the application now is that your source track selections and your in and out marks are always honored when you bring content into the timeline. So if I have this shot, let me put this in here, mark an in, mark an out, and I turn off my V1 source, when I drag this in, I only get the audio. It's kind of dinky, isn't it? I'm only getting the audio, even though I dragged the whole thing onto the timeline because I turned off my source video selection. So I suppose my point is, in terms of efficiency and workflow, that you don't necessarily need to use the source monitor at all. You now have a massive number of source monitors because you can make these very, very big thumbnails, which I think is that useful? I think that's pretty useful, right? Okay, so, oh yeah, I definitely have to show you that. It's an amazing feature. Okay, so let me go back now to, I'm going to save this project, and I'm going to switch back to my main project. Here we go, and now let me go to my, my main sequence. Let's go in here. Let's go into Laura in the Snow. And there we go. I've now got my project. But let's say I want to find that Venice project, and I want to pull the media into Premiere Pro. Well, what I can do is I can go into my media browser, and I can find that Venice project, which actually I think I just called Venice, didn't I? Let's get that. And I'm selecting it in my project, and I'm going into the media folder, and here is the sequence that I made. Now the sequence is called media because it's based on the name of the thing that I used to make it, which happens to be a bin called media, which means I'm a terrible editor because I'm very disorganized. But, you know, when you're in a hurry. So now I'm going to double click to open the sequence. And this is a fantastic feature that was added quite recently to Premiere Pro. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here. When you browse inside a project, you can do this inside of After Effects as well, by the way. When you browse inside a Premiere Pro project or an After Effects project and open a composition or a sequence, but in this case it's a sequence, Premiere Pro will display the sequence via a form of dynamic link in the source monitor. So here is my Venice sequence. There it is. Kind of noisy, but there it is. You'll notice, in addition, Premiere Pro has opened the sequence in a new timeline panel. So I'm seeing the contents of that Venice sequence in my source monitor, and I can control it using a timeline, which means I'm seeing every individual clip. I haven't imported anything yet. I haven't actually added any media. Now there's a rule in Premiere Pro that you cannot have a clip in a sequence that is not also in a bin. But the good news is that Premiere Pro just does it for you. So it doesn't matter, it's going to work. So I'm going to pull this sequence down and pancake it just like I did before. Let's get my Laura in the Snow sequence as well. Let's go to a blank section. And down at the bottom, what's beautiful about this workflow is that the sequence is locked. I cannot modify it because I don't want to mess with my original project. So if I try to move these clips, so look, I'm going to lasso these and drag them, they snap back. You see that? I can't change it. But what I can do is exactly what I did before with Reels. I can drag this and drop it into my sequence and pull whatever content I want into my current project. And when I do that, over in my bin, lo and behold, I've got the clips added automatically. Useful? You can now use projects as repositories of media. Now, very, very quickly, because this is awesome, and I know I'm almost out of time, I've got this sequence. I'm going to close this, this panel here. I've got a shortened version of this sequence, and I'm just going to play back a bit of the music. This is a very simplified version. I just want you to listen to the voiceover we've got. It's lovely, isn't it? Feeling relaxed? Feeling like summer? I am.
We know you'll
It's a bit
love
loud.
our summer dresses, and you won't want to wait for summer to wear them.
Okay, so pretty noisy. So check this out. This is amazing. I'm going to my edit menu, and I'm choosing Edit in Adobe Audition. I'm choosing Sequence. I'll call it Audio Cleanup. That's fine. I'm going to click OK. I'm using Dynamic Link to send the visuals so that I don't need to encode anything for Audition. Premiere Pro is duplicating the media. It's sending it to Audition. And now, in Audition, I've got the contents of my sequence. I don't know if we can get my, my video menu, my video window up. Let's see if this is going to work. There's my sequence visuals. This is coming dynamically from Premiere Pro, and I can now mix to picture. But check this out. It's amazing. The first thing I'm going to do, I don't know if I have time to show you all of this, is I want to change the duration of the music, and I'm going to use a feature called Remix. And Remix allows me to automatically change the duration of my clips without having to do any work. This is amazing. Don't let any clients know that you can do this. So I want this media, this music, to match my visuals, and it's too long right now. So I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to choose Remix, and I'm going to enable it. And Audition is going to analyze the content. It's going to identify the format of the music, the beat, the rhythm, the tonality of it. And once it's done this, which happens very, very quickly, and there we are, I can just click and drag. Oh, let me get this here. There we go. And snap to my video and let go. And I've done it. It's pretty awesome. Can you see these little, let me see if I can zoom in. It's these little lines. That's the join. Have a listen to this. If the audio's set up. There we go. See if you can hear it. A little bit of a join there, but it's not bad, right? Let's hear another join later. Here we go. Oh. Will it play for me? Oh, there we go. It's amazing. So what you have to do is tell the client that took 4 hours. And now if I want to, I don't know if we have time, if I want to, I can just choose to go to my multi-track menu, and I can choose to export this back to Premiere Pro, but you also have an option in the next release of Audition to send this directly through to the media encoder and send it out with the visuals directly from Premiere Pro. So we've got these features now that involve no thinking at all. I can access my media in any format. I can send work over to Audition and remix my duration. If I want to, I can go in and fix the audio for my vocals. You double click, there it is. And I've got all of the noise correction functionality in Audition directly. And I didn't have to think about formats, codecs, phase, bit depth. I just said, yes, please give it to Audition. Right, I'm definitely out of time. Thank you very much. Have a fantastic afternoon.